Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings From The Mount podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. Throughout our previous episodes, we've referenced the path and being called to service. But today we're going to dive deeper into what this actually means in practice. We'll explore the essential qualities required for conscious service, examining how this path differs from traditional religious callings by combining intellectual understanding with practical action. We discuss the journey from being a knowledge-seeking aspirant to becoming an active server, and we'll share insights about perseverance, divine indifference, and what it truly means to give without expectation. This conversation offers practical guidance for anyone feeling that gentle knocking that calls them to pursue a more meaningful mission. And we hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast as well as all the other programs the Mount produces, both today and in the future. We're incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Now, back to the podcast and the path of service. Over the course of the 3 seasons we've been doing this podcast, we come back and forth and touch on this subject, loosely just called the path, right? And we are called to service, and that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And we were just talking before this about the various lineages and where this information comes from. And walking down this path, and sitting in front of us is the Serving Humanity book. It's an interesting calling. It's not like your regular. It's not like the calling to become a monk or to become a priest or a rabbi. It's both intellectual, academic, but also practical. There's a practical side to being in service to humanity, and in that sense, it also brings some pitfalls. It also brings some difficulties. It brings some consternation, and I don't know, these are some general things that we've talked about, but maybe we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the key aspects of what it means to be in service, what it means to be on this path, and to also look at some kind of practical ways of what you do in your everyday life.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because as we were just talking about before we started, we are in this period of where we're re-examining our first principles. We're really everyone's going to be gut checked. You're going to be asked to really, do you really believe what you believe? What are you willing to, invest in what you believe? Is in a complete re-examination of all of our thoughts, feelings, collective knowledge, because now it's all interconnected and now it's all available.
Yeah. Well, you've just asked that in the hour-long podcast that we're going to be doing, we do a lifetime's work. So, let's focus that, because that's what you do when you focus the light of the sun in a magnifying glass to a point and it burns a hole in a piece of paper. Not that we want to burn a hole in people's hearts and minds, but let's bring this into focus and make it accessible. The call is the call of life itself. And until I and you and we realize that life lives inside of us, we're not just alive. Life is expressing through us. We are life. So I'm thinking, this morning I walked around the garden here at Meditation Mount and looking at the flowers, and I realized that the flowers naturally, when the sun comes up and tracks through the sky, they turn their faces to the sun. They're heliotropic. The same applies to us humans. We are heliotropic. We turn our face to the shining countenance of the soul. Therefore, we are called. There's a magnetic call to the truth of who we are, but we don't in the beginning know that it's the truth of who we are. We're just looking for answers. We're looking for knowledge. We're looking for truth. And then eventually we go, oh my God, I am the truth, the way. And it's like, but we have to walk the path. And that's what you said. What does it mean to walk the path? It means to be part of this evolutionary process, which is the expansion of consciousness. The expansion of consciousness and awareness is just the way in which we understand more of who we are and then do something about it. It's, as you say, it's not enough just to say, all right, I'm a divine being. Okay, we're here to apply. We're here to bridge heaven and earth. We're here to bring heaven down on earth and raise earth to heaven, if you'd like to use that sort of biblical phrase. But it's the call. So when you talk about walking the path, it starts one day, I think, when you feel something stirring inside of you. You get up, you've got to deal with your daily duties, you've got to deal with stuff in the world, in your community, and yet there's something else that's sort of knocking on the door, just nagging away, that it needs attention. And it's not an irritant. It's a gentle knocking. And then you realize that this stirring is just as the flowers turn towards the sun, there's something in us that wants to seek the light of truth, the light of knowledge. And therefore, we become a seeker on the path. We seek. And my experience is that as we seek and learn more and understand and have empathy, our heart begins to open as well. And when the heart opens in a seeker, you have this sense of aspiration, this aspiration to know more, to be more, to serve more. Not out of a sense of duty, as we expect duty is what you're expected to do. No, duty is fulfilling the natural urge of the soul to give. That's what I don't think people get in the beginning. The natural urge of the soul is to give and to be of service. Therefore, we are responding to that. And then we've got everything that says, hey, no, I can't do this. I've got these needs. I've got this to take care of. I'm sorry. It's not a primary focus. Mm-hmm. And until this becomes primary focus, you don't have both feet on the path.
Yeah.
And we'll look at different lineages. You mentioned the lineage that is part of Meditation Mount, which is the teachings of the Master DK, which is part of the Trans-Himalayan Mystery Traditions. And these writings were through Alice Bailey, who took down these notes, this dictation at a distance from this master who was alive in Tibet at the time. And it lays down some requirements. So when you walk the path and want to be of service, it's like, okay, let's see and assess how ready you are to be of service. Not in judgment, but okay, you want to be of service. Okay, so what do we need to work on? What do we need to build for you to really be of service? And then you walk on that path. And then you become an aspirant. And then when the coach, the team coaches say, yeah, this is promising, we'll start them. We'll put them in the starting 11. But they would prefer they're on the bench.
Yeah.
On the starting 11, let's try them out. And you become, if you like, a probationary disciple. Mm-hmm. Just to see how you're doing. Not once again in judgment, but because I've said I want to be of service, and they go, okay, let's see how useful you can be.
Right.
And then once you prove that you're reliable, you become an accepted disciple. It's not some sort of badge of honor that you sort of wear and proudly to show the world that you're a chosen one.
That's true. That's a very distinct thing to remember. In this particular path, there aren't merit badges.
There are no merit badges. And in Buddhism, any merits you earn, you offer to the world.
Yeah. And that's you brought that up. I wanted to maybe just touch on it before we go too much further. Because when you think about, for instance, going on a spiritual journey, there's a tendency to think about receiving. You're going to receive all this stuff, but really you're working towards giving. And that's where it starts,
You're working towards soul expression, which is a state of giving.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about that, because sometimes you think about a spiritual journey of just collecting all this knowledge and collecting all, and you don't necessarily realize that the real joy is in the giving.
So let's draw from some of these lineages. Let's draw from the Agni Yoga teachings, for instance. I'd like to find a couple of quotes here. One talks about the relationship between the teacher and the student, and the other is what's required. And here it says, constant readiness is a quality which needs to be developed. Readiness is harmony of the centers, always open to perception and reaction. The person filled with harmony is always receiving and always giving. Always strengthened by an uninterrupted current because the life is flowing through you. As we said before, when you give and receive simultaneously, it's flow. So one of the requirements is to stand in the flow, go with the flow, be the flow. There is no giving without receiving. And to break such a current is the death of advancement. So he's basically saying, if you're just there for yourself and taking, you've broken the thread. There is no way you can walk the path. Yeah. You can't walk the path selfishly.
And I think you see that in some particular luminaries who tend to go down this path, and then it gets kind of dark. You know, it's when you're in it for yourself. You know. Well,
it's power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I've seen it without passing judgment. I've known and personally met a couple of Indian gurus back in the 80s, 90s, who I think it went to their head. The following that they had, and they couldn't keep it clean totally. And then it started to turn in on itself and got a little weird, got a little cultish, and it imploded.
It gets wobbly, yeah.
Well, that's what energy does. See, this is soul energy, and if you use it for selfish means, it will implode.
That's right.
Because it doesn't have a container that can serve it properly.
Yeah.
So it says, a law exists according to which receiving must not be construed as an accrual of personal property. Realization of such a concept can take place in the heart. No false assurances will deceive the heart. Constant readiness is the product of a healthful psychic energy. Psychic energy is the energy that flows when our heart is pure, our motives are pure. So it goes back to what we've said before, Joey. If you have purity of intent and purity of heart, that, if you like, is your insurance policy on the path. Doesn't mean nothing's going to happen. It just means that only the best can happen. It may feel bad to you, but it still may be the best. Purity of intent, purity of heart guarantees that you are as true as you can be in this moment to yourself.
Yeah.
Which means living in truth, to be true to yourself. So let's go back to what you said. A lot of people want to go and learn, go to a teacher and just get knowledge.
Right.
And here's a couple more quotes from Agni Yoga, and then we'll turn to another lineage. But I'm particularly fond of this one. I read a few paragraphs every morning just to sort of stimulate. I don't do caffeine, but I do Agni Yoga. Get a little blast of fire.
Get a sloka.
Get a sloka. Hey man, a non-fat sloka.
Non-fat sloka matcha latte.
So here it says, a disciple addressed his teacher, quoting the long list of qualities required for advancement, because he just read all, the requirements. Sadly, he said, "Teacher, I can never possess these qualities." The teacher asked, "Did you say all?" The disciple continued, "It seems to me that I have not assimilated a single one of these." The teacher then encouraged him, saying, "There is no great harm in feeling that all the needed qualities have not yet been acquired by you. It would be far worse if you thought that you possessed them all."
Yeah.
And then the teacher talks about another instance of talking with the disciple. It says, a disciple importuned his teacher with irritation, saying, "I read the teaching at length, but for all that, I do not know how to begin." The teacher replied, "It is evident that you must first of all free yourself from irritation. This most prevents you from seeing the path." So the person was irritated and angry that he couldn't figure out, after reading all this spiritual teaching, where to start.
Yeah.
Well, remove irritation, then you'll see clearly.
Yeah.
And then, once again, a disciple asked the teacher, "Tell me, how shall I apply the teaching in life?" The teacher advised him to begin with, become kinder. Do not consider good as a supernatural gift. Let it be the foundation of your hearth. Upon it build your fire, and on such a ground the flame will not be scorching. Thus asked the disciples, and the teacher was amazed. After all the teaching, a question as how to begin was necessary. So it's even the teacher has to sort of have patience. It's said that the masters have patience. And Ursula Le Guin, in her book, A Wizard of Earthsea, he said, a master is 9 times patience. Patience means lovingly holding what is evolving and not get irritated because it's not further than it is, which means if you've got a child, if you're a parent, if you're a master with a teacher, somebody who is helping somebody evolve in their own way with freedom of choice, then patience, and patience isn't just sort of sitting there watching the clock tick by saying, well, hurry up, or I can sit here for as long as it's needed. Patience is the ability to hold an intent over time without irritation and without attachment to outcome.
Wait, let's say that again, because that is key.
If I can remember what I just said.
That was beautiful.
So patience is the ability to hold an intent over time, over duration, without irritation and attachment to outcome. So it is a nurturing, a generative space you're holding for it to happen. If you're not careful, you can then be antagonistic to it. You can have irritation. If you're not patient or if you're anxious, then you're not supporting that which you would like to have happen. So patience is really the ability to nurture and support the natural evolution of things, because you've taken on responsibility for tending a garden. Inside that garden are flowers. That's what a master does. Takes on the tending of a garden, not to make each flower in the image and likeness of themselves, but to bring forth the beauty of each disciple. They are the gardener. They're not there to clone all the flowers so they look like themselves. It's, as I say, this podcast is really, if we could expand it to infinity, it still wouldn't be enough. So, that's some from quotes from Agni Yoga, which I find really, really powerful.
Yeah, I really love that definition of patience.
Well, I came to it a few years ago when I was figuring out sitting, waiting for something, and waiting for somebody to change, and being patient. And I was sort of sitting there twiddling my thumbs thinking, I can sit here without getting irritated. I can sit here without getting annoyed. But even that was suppressing my irritation. It wasn't holding a loving space in which something could happen.
That's a very big difference, a very, distinct difference. So,
one is stopping myself from being reactive. The other is being causal by allowing something to happen inside of someone else, by being encouraging. Silently encouraging. Well, I don't know where to dive in. A couple of years ago, we did a podcast, and also we did a broadcast here from the Mount on the spiritual requirements of a warrior, a spiritual warrior.
That's right.
So what I'd like to do is maybe just very, very briefly go through the requirements and then shift to see how these are reflected in a similar way in all of the teachings and the requirements of the teachings, and then we could go into the lineage that runs through our particular work here. But this is what we named before, Joey. Let's start. The first one was recollection and mindfulness. And this is the need microsecond by microsecond to be aware of what's happening. Not just to be aware of what's happening around us, but to recollect and to know every moment who we are, our essential divinity. So we're always reminding ourselves of who we are. So we stand in that mindful space. So recollection and mindfulness is not just what's going on around us, it's being aware of who we are and where we are and what's happening. And that awareness is essential because without awareness, we don't have the information to change and be different. Self-awareness leads to self-correction. Mm-hmm. Self-correction leads to self-advancement and self-growth, self-revelation. But it all starts with self-awareness.
Yeah.
If I'm not aware, how can anything change unless it's imposed upon me? And if it's imposed upon me, it's not a true change from the inside.
I think that's a very important point right there, because I feel like that's something we run into a lot. It has to come from within. And I see that all the time with people who ask for advice or ask for guidance, and you realize, hey, I could tell you a bunch of to-do lists, but until it comes from within you, until you really want to embody that and are motivated internally, it's just kind of window dressing.
Well, you're helping life set up a classroom where they can have their aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're not telling them what the answer is.
Right.
You're setting up the condition where they can go, oh wow, oh yeah, aha, now I get it.
Yeah.
When I can say, now I get it, it's been born inside me.
Mm-hmm.
So the next requirement was disidentification. This is the ability to disidentify with all that's claiming our attention so we can act from a place of non-attachment. So our identity is defined by our connection to source and not to our attachment to outer forms. So you could say, I have a task or I have an assignment as a soul in the world, but I am not that task. I am not that assignment. I am the soul in action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another key distinction. Yeah.
So it isn't even, well, I'm a server. No, serving is what I do as a soul.
Right. Yeah.
It's my soul in action. And then the next one, non-investment. The ability to do whatever is required without becoming captured and enmeshed by the task at hand. Pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. But you can get caught up in the machinery.
Yeah.
You can get so involved in what's going on and what's in front of you, particularly when things are not going right. You just jump in and you become the problem. Or the problem just,
Yeah. Or you identify, your identity becomes the problem, or even sometimes the problem solver.
Yeah.
And
the investment could be the investment in a particular outcome.
Right.
Because if you invest in a particular outcome, you can block inspiration and the inner guidance that may cause something totally different to happen that's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next one, continual repurification. This is what we named before as the practice of spiritual hygiene. You've got to keep the inner field of consciousness clean and clear of distortions. So this is making sure that whatever beliefs you have or assumptions are not distorted and clouded. They're just a particular colored filter. You have to realize that I am seeing the world through this filter, which is very difficult to do for the eye to perceive the eye to see the eye. So this is a difficult one, but it does mean that you can make sure that your emotions are clean, your speech is clean, your body is clean. Cleanliness is not some sort of moral path you have to follow. It's what it said before in the Bible. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It means that when you are free from distortion and free from everything that isn't yourself, i.e. dirt and mm-hmm. strange beliefs, then you are who you are. So we use prayer, we use meditation, mantras, dynamic exercises, therapy, sound meditation. We use lots of things to keep the field clean. So this is the practice, daily practice for each of us of spiritual hygiene, whatever that looks like. Being responsible for our own ecosystem of self. Now, the next one we've touched on many times. It's called non-reaction. So you refrain from reacting to the elements of the surrounding environment and to the people involved so that you are not energetically connected to any of the outer circumstances and therefore pulled off center. Doesn't mean you're not involved. It doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you're cut off. It just means you don't react. You're not triggered. I guess we're more familiar with that phrase. Don't get triggered. What gets triggered is not my soul. It's my patterns.
Right. Yeah.
And we've named many times, the greatest service we can do each other is to support the person, not the pattern.
Yeah. I love that phrase. Yeah. That's a game changer.
Support the person, not the pattern.
Yeah.
And then following hot on the heels of non-reaction, non-irritation. And we keep going back to this one, and we'll continue to return to this because it is the most important, and it's probably the biggest problem. Like as a runner, I know I used to go out in the mountains and run. Occasionally, I would get a rock in my shoe, and in the early days, I thought, I'll when we get to the next lake or mountaintop or whatever it was we were going for, I'll get it out. And by the time I got there, it had started to, cause some problems, blisters or some abrasions. And what happens now is anytime I got a stone in my shoe, I stop immediately and take it out. Why wait?
Yeah.
Because I don't want any irritation. Mm-hmm. So in Agni Yoga, we go back to Agni Yoga, it said that irritation is one of the greatest perils because it creates an actual chemical substance that they call imperil. So every time we are irritated, it actually irritates at a deep level our inner body, and it creates an inflammation that creates, if you like, some sort of toxic emission. So here's a couple of things from Agni Yoga. It says it's necessary to distinguish between indignation of spirit and irritation. The fire of irritation must be divided into two kinds. When irritation has an impersonal cosmic character, its poison may be washed away by a current of prana. That means if we get irritated because of just the state of the world and nothing is perfect yet, but if we get hung up and irritated with something, somebody, we put our energy into it, it says, but if harmful feelings such as conceit or self-pity intensify the irritation, the sediment of poison will be precipitated upon the centers, our chakras. Then there is no means to remove it. One can only wear it away by developing cosmic perception. So once it's inside your body, it'll take a while to release it.
Yeah. I think
it's like coming clean, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, this is something I think people can really relate to. I mean, when I noticed when I was younger and through my midlife that if I would get angry, it was like I was this like cosmic bile, that it would just flood my body, and it would take hours and sometimes days to flush it out. And as I wanted to, it was part of the whole reason I wanted to develop, practices, tools, skills, so that I could circumvent that before it even happened. Because once it happens, then you're just sitting in it.
I love the cosmic bile. That's wonderful. Yeah. I know from my doctor friends is that when something that is not benevolent or something is harmful enters you, whether it's stress, if you get rid of it straight away, it really doesn't do that much harm. But when it actually enters into the different systems of our body, the endocrine or
Yeah.
the lungs, the bloods, the circulatory system, the everything that is part of our body, it then starts to cause a disease inside of that system. Because it's gone too far. It's gone too far in. And in Agni Yoga, it says you can use psychic energy. If you feel a cold coming on, you can actually get it before it takes root and sort of just put it inside the fire of psychic energy. But once it gets inside your system and precipitates into a disease, it's tougher to get out.
Yeah, certainly is.
So that thing of preventing it, endocrine, I think, was the...
endocrine, there you go.
Yes. So I realize that it's like I got to keep my mental faculties alive and awake as we get older. I do take my ginkgo capsules every day.
Oh, good.
So don't worry, Joey.
Oh, great.
It's like... so... Here's two more quotes just to round this off about irritation. For the last time I shall speak of irritation, discern its harm, not only personal, but also spatial. That means in the whole atmosphere. This worm, concealed by a smile and politeness, ceaselessly tunnels through the aura. Its harm undermines all works. Then the last one. In anger and irritation, man considers himself strong. This is according to earthly considerations, but regarded from the subtle world, the irritated man is especially powerless. He attracts to himself a great number of small entities which feed on the emanations of his anger. Besides, he lets down his own bars and allows even the lower beings to read his thoughts. Therefore, the state of irritation is inadmissible, not only as a producer of imperil, but also as a gateway for lower entities. It's basically saying you can't walk the path if you are still living with irritation.
Yeah. And even if you're not open to that tends to veer into kind of interesting ground. It's not the idea of entities, lower, like feeding on you or feeding on your energy. But I mean, if you just think about how your energy feels, how your body feels, how your mind feels when you're stuck in those places, it's not hard to make that leap.
Well, yeah. And so, do you want to go through the rest of the list of the spiritual requirements for a warrior? The next one's dynamism. It's allowing the solar power of the soul to be the constant and compelling source of momentum that moves us forward. And dynamism, in order for it to happen, we have to guard against the despondency of depression, which has its roots in self-pity and vain wishings and cuts us off from our spiritual source. So dynamism requires this, being solar powered and compelled by purpose, compelled by this deep service call. And then we go down to the next one, selfless, loving service of the common good. And we'll find this reflected when we go down and look at the list from Alice Bailey. Our deepest suffering is our greatest opportunity to learn about ourselves and to take action to be a better person. That's sort of a general statement. So when we pledge ourselves to work for the common good, we develop strength in the face of all painful circumstances, and we learn selflessness, that it's not about me. I'm not a victim. I happen to be inside a set of circumstances that are causing me either pain or pleasure, sorrow, whatever it may be. But that's not who I am. That's where I am. And so the compassionate warrior is asked to be like the sun and give freely of the soul's light and love without asking for anything in return. And that brings us to the next point, which is daring and joyful striving. So this is where you have to have the courage to face a challenge that may bring even physical harm. It could bring emotional harm, mental challenges, but the one that we are wired to respond to first is physical harm.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean that you're not vigilant, you're not aware? It means you have the courage to face whatever is happening. And that courage is a shield as well.
Yeah.
But it's also the courage to question and challenge our own beliefs, as you hinted at before.
Yeah, that's important. That's a big one.
It's one thing to have the courage to go into battle, but what if I am saying, is this really true, Michael, what you believe in?
Yeah.
Not in what you just believe in about another person, but what you believe yourself to be.
Yeah.
Who you believe yourself to be. Because the truth remains. So am I willing to die to what I believe to be true about myself in order to experience what is the truth of myself? That takes courage.
Yeah. That's big. That's a big leap.
That's a big one. And courage is the strength of the heart.
Yeah.
And as we said before, daring is more, courage is of the heart. Daring is this fiery act of will where you dare to do something. And we've used this example from Agni Yoga of it's impossible to leap a chasm in 2 bounds. So daring means you go for it.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing other than victory.
That's
so
right.
All through the Agni Yoga teachings, it sounds a little weird to begin with. It's like, there is only victory. There is only victory. That means in the end, we will overcome. Sounds like a 60s song from We Shall Overcome.
It does.
But that was the whole freedom thing.
Yeah.
We shall overcome. Eventually we shall overcome. And we're still singing that now, given what's happening in the world. And some people wonder, gosh, will we really overcome? Yes, we will. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take it's a long road to get there. Mm-hmm. And in order to walk that road, to walk that path, there are certain requirements. These are the requirements we're talking about now. So those are the ones listed. And you can go back to the 3 requirements that we talked about recently, Joey, that form the last line in a mantra that the Master DK gives, where he says that each day, if you could ask that you play your part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. And he said, if you could meet those 3 requirements, you will be further along the path than you could be if you read all the books in the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's very timely because there's a telescoping of activity, and so if you could approach each day with that, your entire experience will change.
So these requirements aren't these strict rules that somebody's enforcing you have to obey against your will. Mm-hmm. They're basically saying, this is how life evolves. If you want to be consciously walking the path of evolution, which is the path of giving and receiving, of service, then this is what it takes to be ready to participate.
Mm-hmm. And from a almost scientific kind of approach, there's more and more epigenetic evidence for this actually being a real thing. That gene expression can be affected by mental state, physical state, and that certain things can't work or can't come online unless certain criteria are met. And so if you really want to think about it in terms of spiritual and physical evolution, it's like putting yourself in this state allows you to evolve.
Right. So if we were to just draw some examples from the lineage that we're part of, and when we say discipleship, people break it up into subgroups. Like there's aspirants and there's pledged disciples, accepted disciples, there's masters, there's initiates. Basically what DK says, look, in the end, we're all disciples. Everybody's learning, everybody's growing, no matter where you stand on the path. Mm. So discipleship really means the walking of the path, following a discipline. Mm. A discipline is just walking a path of principles. And where's it going to lead? It's going to lead you to yourself. And when you are led to yourself, you're led to the whole of life. Because that's That's the big aha. So it says that discipleship is pledged to do three things: to serve humanity, to cooperate with the destiny of the planet, which we know as the divine plan, and it's to help us develop the powers of the soul to expand our consciousness so we can function in the three planes, in the three worlds, and in our soul body, and follow the guidance of the higher self and not the dictates of the lower aspects of our manifested self. It's pretty straightforward. A disciple is one who realizes simultaneously the relative significance of each unit of consciousness and also its vast importance. His sense of proportion is adjusted and sees things as they are, sees people as they are, sees himself as he inherently is, and seeks then to become that which he is. So it's a seeking of truth. Not truth as knowledge, but truth as the realization of the essential divinity, the God within, which is one of the principles here at Meditation Mount, essential divinity. I mean, I don't want to dive too much into the details, but I also don't want to skate over the surface. Let's just try and find some sort of middle ground here, because what I'd like to do is to look at the list of requirements that is given here in the teachings through Alice Bailey. First one is sincerity. It's constant study and the apprehension by the ear and eye of all the ageless wisdom teachings, that they then serve us to increase our responsibility. So sincerity is when we actually say yes. And I know in the beginning, people commit themselves. I'm going to commit myself to a life of service. And then once you've committed yourself, you realize that, there's more to, I've got to give everything. And you say, well, I'm dedicated. So you move from commitment to dedication. And then you realize there's one more stage: consecration. Dedication is, right, I'm going to give my time. It's like I'm going to go and help out at the food bank.
Right.
Consecration, where your whole life is service. You have no thought for yourself because you as a self are taken care of by the fact that you're serving others. That's a law. That's how life works. And that is a leap of faith so that you can experience that reality.
Yeah, that's a special state of grace when you arrive in that space.
It is. And the next requirement is sensitivity. Sensitivity means, once again, being sensitive to each other, yourself, sensitive through your higher faculties. So you're registering things through soul, through intuition, through a clean psychic field. So you've got a clean read of what's happening in your environment. You're sensitive. Because one of the things you can get when you get overstimulated in the path, you get oversensitive. And if you're oversensitive, it could easily lead to overreaction and irritation.
Yeah.
I've seen people who have gotten into trouble by meditating too much. They spend hours. They said, well, I'm going to go for it. And by going for it, instead of going out and helping, they decide the best way for me to gain enlightenment is to meditate for 4 hours and really force it.
Right.
And they've overstimulated. And when they've overstimulated, they've caused irritation. And they've got like a big spiritual blister inside them. And it throws them off. I've seen people go off the rails and literally lose their mind because there was too much juice flowing through. They'd opened up themselves to too much juice. We do it by opening up like a flower, petal by petal. We're called by the sun. We said before, you don't force the petals of the chakras open to access the power.
Right.
You can't do that. at your peril. Which brings us to the third one, which is psychic powers. And psychic powers really means intuition, your ability to intuit something, to know direct knowledge, straight knowledge, as it's called in the Agni Yoga teachings. You suddenly know something because you've registered a truth. You've picked it up. Your radar's on. So there are psychic powers. Psychic powers doesn't mean you can move objects across a table. That is a very sort of gross manipulation of the axiom of energy follows thought. You can actually move things by thought. Of course you can. But we're not moving objects by thought. We're creating new worlds by creating new thought forms. So moving right along, it then talks about astral polarization and mental polarization, and that sounds strange. But astral polarization means that we have feelings, we have emotions, but we can't get hung up in the emotions and attached to them. Like, we can't drown. We can swim in the water, but we can't drown. Because when you drown, you lose your ability to function in the air, in the light of intuition. And mental polarization means that you are focused mentally and clearly. You're not pulled away by lower thoughts, by beliefs that are distorted. So it goes back to making sure that the waters of your emotions are clean and stable and healthy, and that your mind is free from all contaminants, which could be a belief in something, a fixed belief, a fixation, fanaticism. So, which leads us to the next one in the list, and I mean this where it gets interesting. Mm-hmm. Detachment.
Yeah.
So detachment is one of the most important things. The disciple comes to realize, it says here, that because of this detachment, he is, for the remainder of his life, simply a worker, one of a great army of spiritual workers with supposedly no personality, inclinations, objective, or wishes. There is for him nothing but constant work and constant association with other people. He may be a naturally isolated person with a deep craving for solitude, but that matters not. It is the penalty he must pay for the opportunity to meet the need of the hour. So the detachment isn't hiding away. The detachment is letting go of your own needs.
Right. Yeah, your own needs and your own sort of low-level desires. You know, that's a very fascinating idea because you kind of sometimes think about joining a monastery and removing yourself from the world, but this is asking you to be in the world.
Well, that may have been fine way back when. Mm-hmm. We're in a different time now. All souls on deck.
Yeah.
All souls on deck who are equipped to serve.
Yeah.
And so the other thing about detachment, it says your personality detachment must develop into a deeper attachment to the souls within the forms. Thus understanding grows. Work with detachment, and because you are demanding nothing for the separated self, all things will therefore come to you. Have no thought for the morrow.
Yeah.
It's like once I start worrying about where am I going to get something from, and participating in life says, oh, you're part of the club,
Yeah.
Yeah. We do home deliverers.
Yeah. It is interesting how in my own life, my own personal experience, how that is actually played out that way.
Give me an example, what happened?
I mean, I think about when I was in a band and when I was touring with bands and it's I made myself completely available and completely open and completely in the experience. And I would maybe come home from a tour and have no idea where my next gig was going to come from, and only have enough money for a couple months rent, and and just like it would just appear, and like I was just open to it, and one thing led to another and to another and to another, and it's like especially when I was in a band, just willing it to happen, and we were far more successful, I think, than we deserved, but maybe we did, and it was just making yourself available and showing up, And,
well, because when you participate in life, life participates in you.
Yeah.
It's magnetic.
Yeah.
And the next one is called impersonality, which is sort of tied to detachment, because impersonality is not taking yourself personally.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't become the center of attention.
Yeah.
I don't know what else we need to say.
Well, I mean, I think that is maybe more difficult than it seems, actually, especially if you're in this kind of world of being in service, because it tends to lead towards the ego running.
Okay,
rampant.
well then let me give you a quote here. That it says, "It is hard for the disciple during the process of his early training to hold earnestly to his own ideals and to pursue forcefully his own spiritual integration and yet remain impersonally oriented towards other people. He seeks recognition of his struggle and achievement. He longs to have the light which he has kindled draw forth a reaction from others. He wants to be known as a disciple, as a member of the band.
Yeah.
He aches to show his power and his highly developed love nature so that he may evoke admiration or at least challenge. But nothing happens. He is looked upon as no better than all the rest of his brothers and sisters. Life, therefore, proves dissatisfying." So it's this whole thing. Am I here because I want to be seen? A lot of people we know, you want to help because you want to be seen as a helper.
Yeah.
And because if I'm helping and seen to be helping, then I'm fulfilling something useful in life. My life has meaning. We go back to meaning and belonging. So this whole thing of impersonality, that means that you go about your business not looking for any recognition, not hoping that one day you'll be given the Oscar.
And that is so at odds with our current state of culture,
Because number one, if you're number two, I remember the Olympics all those years ago where the Americans who got silver refused to go up and get it because it wasn't good enough. It wasn't the gold. And they were so dissed that they only came second. That means you're the second best in the whole world, the whole planet Earth. But because of this belief and this thing, you've got to be number one, there's only one number one. What happens to everyone else who's not the number one?
Yeah.
So anyway, this impersonality is really difficult because I know with me, can I go and do something knowing that it won't be recognized? And sometimes I'm going to get ridiculed and have people get the wrong end of why I'm doing something. Can I handle that? And in the teachings, it says, be prepared to be ridiculed. Be prepared to be misunderstood. That's just part of the path. It doesn't mean you haven't done something that caused that, but it means that that's what happens when you tread the path. You cause reactions in other people. And if the light of your being shines too brightly in somebody else and they can't face what they've seen inside themselves as a result of your light shining on them, they're going to turn on you. They're not going to examine their own patterns.
Yeah, that plays out. that tracks, that's on brand.
Yes. And then we go to the next one, divine indifference.
This is one of my favorites. I just love that phrase. And
With true divine indifference, I shoulder every load that comes my way, for naught can touch my soul. To manifest this confidence, I dedicate myself. That's like a pledge to divine indifference. Divine indifference says, I do care, but I don't care what happens to me by way of reaction from others. What I care about is living in truth with myself, living in integrity. So divine indifference is not indifference to others in life, it's divine indifference, which means that I don't care about how the outer form is perceived if I am operating and emanating from my true source. That's all that's required. Whatever happens as a result of that is what happens as a result of that.
Yeah. And for me, divine indifference is also an encapsulation of how to wrap your head around the idea of the one, of all of us being part of one. In that sense, you can't. There is no one that's better. There's no good guy, bad guy, because
Well, let me quote you something that just backs up what you just said, so it must be true, Joey. The lessons of divine indifference, once mastered, release the soul to union with the one.
Yeah, that's beautiful to me. That brings it home for me.
Yeah. So divine indifference doesn't mean not caring.
Right.
It's another version of non-attachment to outcomes.
Yeah.
So we got a few more. Hopefully we can cover them in the time allotted.
Oh, of course.
Serenity. What is serenity? It's a calmness, calmness of your mind, of your emotions, of your whole being. How you show up in the world is serene. It doesn't mean you're cut off and sort of statue-like. Mm-hmm. It means unruffled.
Yeah.
Back to my favorite word of unruffled.
Yeah. That's another thing that, like a practical everyday takeaway is being unruffled in this day and age is a superpower. I mean, if you can find the serenity to sit in yourself and sit centered with everything that's going on around you, you become unflappable.
Well, exactly. And it says aspirants to do this difficult work of achieving serenity much watch themselves with infinite care. And it says the following rules might be given. It's essential that there should be an endeavor to arrive at absolute purity of motive.
Mm. That's right.
And the ability to enter the silence of the high places will follow next. The stilling of the mind depends on the law of rhythm. If you are vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. Balance and poise must be restored before equilibrium can be reached. The silence that comes from the inner calm is the one to cultivate. So remember, it also says that the lack of calm in daily life prevents the teachers on the inner levels from reaching you, from sending you messages, encouragement. Because you are not online with the greater sphere of life. So serenity, which allows non-distortion in the field, if you like, clear communication. And then there are one I know that you appreciate, Joey. Perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, perseverance is, that is absolutely the key to basically my entire experience. I mean, it's just the absolute refusal to give up, even when it seems like there's no point,
Here's a hint that the master gives. He says, persevere without discouragement and with no undue pondering upon results achieved. You are not in a position rightly to gauge your own progress. Just continue to serve and to work and leave realization with its results and effects to take place naturally without any forcing of the process. Your physical brain is not yet in a condition wherein the inner activities can be accurately registered, but that is no indication that activity is not great and right. So just keep on going. Just keep on. And it goes back to working steadfastly, with steadfastness. Mm-hmm. It's perseverance. It's one step and 1 foot in front of the other, one step at a time, and holding true and staying clean.
Yeah.
If you want to bring it down to something very practical, perseverance. Yeah. How does it happen that you're 6 years clean?
Yeah.
Does perseverance have anything to do with that?
A little bit, yeah.
Where are those times where it's been tested and perseverance had to be called upon, Joey? If you don't mind sharing.
It was most specifically in the first couple of years, because I was so feral. My brain was just like, my body was not working. My brain was not working. It seemed utterly pointless. But then your body starts trying to normalize like all the chemicals in your body, all the hormones, and it just wasn't happening for me. And it took many years. And then maybe in year 4 or 5, there was this kind of a dead period where it just like I was completely numb. I didn't feel anything. I had no motivation, no desire. So it wasn't necessarily a bad feeling. It was just no feeling. And it lasted a long time. And I was worried. I'm like, am I ever going to feel anything again? Am I going to...
So how did you keep going?
I just kept I kept my routines, Stoops had a lot of help, and this was, made sure that he got what he needed. Basically, I focused not on myself. I was up here almost every day. We were working on things, this was during COVID. So, we were just trying to get by, and everyone was kind of just trying to do the best they can and help each other. It was an interesting time, but really the focus was getting out of my own head, getting out of my own existence and helping other people.
Right. Thank you. Well, we got a couple more left. Mm-hmm. Humility is this one. Mm. And we've mentioned humility before because the Tibetan says it's a sense of an adjusted sense of right proportion where you don't aggrandize yourself and you don't belittle yourself. Mm-hmm. It's just an understanding of who you are. It's not an inferiority complex. Humility, mm-hmm. You don't have to sort of cringe and become smaller than you are. It just means that you don't aggrandize, you don't blow yourself up out of proportion. Mm-hmm. You don't make yourself the center of attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, another thing is generally at odds with everyone focused on being the main character at this point. Social media has such a inherent bias towards that because you participate through the, through your avatar of yourself, this projection of yourself, and therefore you become like this main character in this, reflected story. That's not, it's a digital story of yourself, and so as that focus, it's almost, it's almost an anathema to that. You almost have to take a step back and really just for lack of a better term, just let someone else have the spotlight.
Well, exactly, because we're part of a greater organism, mm-hmm. where it's not about the hero.
Yeah.
It's not about
it's about the whole.
the singer and the band.
Yeah. It's about the song. It's not about the singer. It's about the song.
It's the song. Yeah. Okay. So just a quote to wrap up the humility. It said, the disciple needs to cultivate that true humility which will force him to give all he has in selfless service and then to forget that he has thus given of himself. Mm. He must have no thought of himself as a factor in the case. Only when detachment and humility are present can a disciple really serve. Cultivate, therefore, these qualities and continue the giving of yourself in service. And I just want to point out that these books were written when he was the predominant mm-hmm. pronoun. So I'm quoting here.
Yeah.
So 2 more. Esoteric sense. And to have an esoteric sense, it means the power to live and to function subjectively, to possess a constant inner contact with the soul and the world in which it is found. And this is, our inner life. But it has to work out subjectively through love, actively shown, through wisdom steadily outpoured, and through the capacity to include and to identify oneself with all that breathes and feels, which is the outstanding characteristic of all truly functioning children of God. So this esoteric sense goes back to the principles here at Meditation Mount of we understand that all life is sacred, that everyone we meet has a spark of the Creator inside them, that love is the true currency of the relationships we have with everyone, and that we're part of this integrated, interdependent matrix of life described as the principle of unanimity. So that really addresses that esoteric sense. It doesn't mean special powers. So the final two, courage. We talked about courage before with the requirements of a spiritual warrior. It says it takes courage to make spiritual decisions and to abide by them. It takes courage to adjust your lives daily and in all relations to the need of the hour and to the service of humanity. It takes courage to demonstrate to those around you that the present world catastrophe is of more importance to you than the petty affairs of your individual lives and your humdrum contacts. It takes courage to discard alibis which have prevented you from participating to date in the all-out effort which characterizes today the activities of the wise ones. It takes courage to make sacrifice, to refuse time to non-essential activities, and to deal with the physical body as if it were free from all impediments. It takes courage to ignore frailties which may be present, etc., etc. This doesn't mean to overlook and not take care of. It just means that courage is a source of strength. Mm-hmm. It's not a turning off of our feelings. Mm. And then the final one, the capacity to give. Mm. So it said, the question is, what is your gift to the group? That's the question that the teacher asked the pupil. What's your gift to the group? The gift of a pure and unselfish spirit and a rare capacity to give. No greater gift can be yours. The driving urge to give selflessly with no motive but that of pure and loving spirit. There is a great law which can be embodied in the words, to those who give all is given. And that's what you touched on before, is that you don't have to think about your own survival. If you, not if, but when you give to the whole gives back to the parts of itself that contribute to the wellness and the well-being of the whole.
That's right.
So it's about living harmlessly. Yeah. Now, we've just gone through a whole load of lists and people are going, oh my God, how am I ever going to live up to that? Well, we don't live up to it, we live into it. Mm-hmm. Every day we live it a little more. We practice it. And then we suddenly realize, I remember going up in the mountains, leading groups up in the mountains, and you'd be trucking along and you realize, oh my God, we got hours to go. And then you reach a mountain peak and you look back and you're like, God, have we come all that way? Oh my God, look how far we've come. But all I could think of how far we've got to go. Yeah. But so occasionally it's good to keep it in perspective. Look, we've come a long way. Don't rest on your laurels, but we have come a long way. Momentum is happening. We are in movement. Things are happening. Yeah. Don't lose hope. Yeah. So, Joey, this is so concentrated. We could probably dilute it. 8 parts to one, right. or 8 parts water, one of this. This is a very concentrated thing, which is why walking the path is a daily practice.
That's the key takeaway right there.
It's a daily practice. Mm-hmm. There's no other way of doing it.
No. It's a constant pattern of showing up, and you can't embody them all at the same time, but you will find along the way that you pick up a piece here, you pick up, a little bit of knowledge there, and you're constantly giving that back. And before you know it, you are living this.
And before you know it, you look back and say, look how far we've come. Not out of self-gratification saying, well, look how far I've come, how good I am, but saying, well, it works. Yeah. It works. My faith in life has been affirmed.
Mm-hmm.
Trust the process.
That's right.
So the thing is, we're all walking the path. It's just for many lifetimes we're sleepwalking, and we haven't woken up to the fact that we are souls incarnated on earth. So maybe if I would be allowed just to wrap this up with the words that the Master DK gave to Roberto Assagioli to help him remember who he was and why he was. I am a messenger of light. I am a pilgrim on the way of love. I do not walk alone, but am one with all great souls, and one with them in service. Their strength is mine. This strength I claim. My strength is theirs, and this I freely give. A soul, I walk on earth. I represent the One.
All right. Thank you, Michael. That was really, I really appreciate that exploration.
Thanks, Joey. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to be part of the evolution of the planet. And in order to be of greater service, we have to expand our capacity to be of service, not just our willingness, but our skill. We've got to become more skilled as souls on earth so we can apply the soul's gifts. And we do it together.
That's right.
So thank you, Joey. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Michael. All right.